Hey, what's up? It's Korosum here, and today we're gonna learn how to validate data in our API. In the previous video, we learned how to create CRUD functions, and we could create, read, update, and delete data with our application. And today we're gonna learn how to validate data before sending to database. Alright, so let's get started. In our application, we need to keep the database as clean as possible. So the system should only allow valid data when creating and updating content, and invalid data must be rejected with a user-friendly error message. Alright, so for the validation, I'm going to use this package called fastest-validator. There are tons of packages for data validation in Node.js, but I find this package so much convenient to configure, and also it is really easy to customize these messages and all the responses. So I'm going to use this package for my project. Alright, I'm going to install it. I'm going to open up the terminal and I'm going to paste down npm install fastest-validator. Alright, installation is complete. Then let me import that to our post controller. Const, I'm going to name this validator equals to require fastest-validator. Alright, then I need to define the validation schema. Here I'm going to create a new constant called schema, and it is a new object. For the save method, I need to validate these fields like this. For my title field, the title field should be a required field, and also it should be a string, and it should have a maximum length of 100 characters. And for the content field, it is also a required field, and it should have a maximum length of 500 characters. And also this category ID field should have a numeric value. Alright, that's a pretty much basic validation for now. Let's start with that. Alright, I'm gonna type the validation schema for title field. Title, the type should be a string, and it is a mandatory field, so the optional is false, and the maximum length should be 100 characters. And for the content field, it should be a type of string, and it is also a mandatory field, so the optional should be a false, and the max length should be 500 characters. And the category ID should be type of number, and it is also a mandatory field. Alright, now the validation schema is defined. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new instance of our validator class we just imported. And this object contains a method called validate. And we need to pass our post object which contains all the request fields as the first argument of this, and as the second argument we need to pass our validation schema. Alright, and if the validation is passed, this validate method should return a true. If it doesn't, if the validation is failed, it will return all the error messages and the fields as an array. So we need to get that to a new constant, validation response, just like this. If the validation is passed, this constant will be a true, and if it doesn't, this will be an array of error messages. So we need to check if this is true or not. If this is not equal to true, so which means the validation is failed. Let's then return a custom response. The status should be like 400 because this is a bad request. And let's add a message, validation failed, and let's include the error messages as well. Just like this. Alright, to summarize, first we imported this validator class from the fastest-validator package, and then we define the validation schema. The title field should be a string and it should be a mandatory field, and also it should have a maximum length of 100 characters. And for the content, it should be a string too, and also should be a mandatory field and should have the maximum length of 500 characters, and also the category ID should be a number and it is also mandatory. Then we created a new instance of this validator class we just imported, and that instance has a method called validate. And as the first argument of this validate method, we need to pass our post object, which contains all the request fields, and also as the second argument we need to pass our validation schema. Alright, if the validation is passed, it will return a true. If it doesn't, it will return an array of error messages. Alright, here we check it. So if the validation is failed, we return a response with a message and with the error messages. Alright, that's pretty much it. Let's test this with our API testing client. Let me open up the terminal and let's start our Node.js application. npm start. Looks like we don't have any errors. First, let's send some legal data. Alright, I am already getting a validation fail. Let's check what's the message. The category ID field must be a number. Alright, so this category ID field should be a number. So it works. So this should be a number, and for the title field, let's drop that field and send the request again, and we have a validation error saying the title field is required. And for the content field, let's drop that too, and now we have two error messages in this errors array. and let's change this to a string, and let's send the request again, and we have now 3 error messages as we have defined in our validation schema. Alright, so we have successfully implemented validation for the save method. Now let's just add the same validation for update method as well. I'm just gonna copy these lines of code to our update method. I'm gonna paste them down right here. The schema should be same because it has the same payload as the save method, and also I'm gonna replace this post object with the updated post object, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me open up the console and let's restart the console. Node application npm start. Looks like we don't have any errors. Let's open up the update request and let's send the payload. Alright, so it works just like before. We have the same error response for the category ID to be a number. Let's correct that, and yeah, post has been successfully updated with the legal payload. Let's drop some fields from the payload and let's try again. We have nicely formatted validation errors. So just like that, we can define validations for our request bodies, and so we can validate and make sure the data is clean before sending to the database. Alright, so that's how we can implement the validation in our API. In the next video, we're gonna complete the comments module. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.